Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yao Mean of Revolution. Trump's war on Brics failing miserably. The rise of the dragon, they can't be stopped. Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. You in the House of Revolution. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Well, let's get into some geopolitical chessboard activity. Let's get into the content. Salute.
Everyone is watching the surface. Taiwan, tariffs, tensions in the South China Sea. But what if those headlines are just the cover story? What if the real war between the US and China isn't about islands or ideology, but about minerals buried underground? Right now, there is a shadow trade war raging, a war for control over the rare earths, metals, and atomic materials that power fighter jets, AI, chips, quantum computing, electric vehicles, and nuclear submarines. And while politicians talk about freedom and security, behind the scenes, they are fighting over who controls the elements that control the future. What if the fight for Taiwan is about chips, but also about who holds the gate to the world's most advanced mineral supply chain? And what if the West is already losing? Let's dive in and find out. A big thank you to today's sponsor, Cleantech CTV, US reliance on bypasses. Let's be blunt. The United States is dangerously dependent on China, not just for the raw minerals themselves, but for processing, refining, and separation, which are the true choke points in the global supply chain. Here is the reality. 70% of US rare earths imports come from China. China also controls 85 to 90% of global rare earth refining and over 90% of graphite processing. Beijing also leads in gallium, germanium, and tungsten, all essential for semiconductors, lasers, and aerospace systems. And it goes deeper. Even more obscure minerals like fluorspar, used to produce hydrofluoric acid for semiconductors, lithium batteries, and uranium enrichment, are increasingly subject to Beijing's export control. The US doesn't produce any acid grade fluorspar domestically and relies on imports, much of which still trace back, yes, to China, even if rerouted through intermediaries. That's become the name of the game, rerouting. In the wake of China's 2024-2025 export restrictions, US companies started sourcing through Thailand, Mexico, and South Korea, often using shell entities or third-party processors to mask the Chinese origin of materials. On paper, the supply chain is diversified. In practice, it's still heavily tethered to Beijing. To make matters worse, China has begun consolidating its mineral exports into centralized, state monitored trading platforms, giving it not just control over supply, but over visibility, timing, and pricing as well. The uncomfortable truth: even when the US owns the mines, China often still owns the middle. Until the United States invests in domestic processing infrastructure, including for materials like fluorspar, it will continue fighting for tech dominance with one hand tied behind its back. Taiwan double role. Taiwan is often viewed as the center of the global chip war, and rightly so. Semiconductor giant TSMC produces more than
Revolutionary salute to our family of Auto getting his membership to the House of Revolution. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate you helping me keep the lights on here at the House of Revolution. Salute, soldier. Revolution is a way of life.
More than 90% of the world's most advanced logic chips, powering everything from iPhone and AI servers to F 35 fighter jets and quantum computing prototypes. But here is the lesser known layer. Taiwan's chip dominance depends not only on engineering but on minerals. The fabrication of cutting edge semiconductors requires a steady supply of ultra high purity
Revolution is
critical
a way of life.
minerals.
Salute.
Fluorspar to produce hydrofluoric acid, essential for etching chip patterns. Rare earths used in polishing wafers and in lithography systems. And gallium and germanium used in high frequency and optoelectronic devices. Most of these inputs are either mined or processed in China. So, if Beijing were to cut off or restrict completely access to these materials, even without a single chip crossing the Taiwan Strait, it could effectively slow or choke Taiwan's chip production. In other words, controlling the upstream mineral supply chains is a stealthy way to control the downstream chip supply. No need for military confrontation, no need for blockades. Just turn the valves off at the refinery. That's why this mineral war isn't just about rare earths, it's about who commands the global computing infrastructure. And Taiwan is the hinge between physical materials and digital powers. As nations race to control the future of energy, AI, and advanced manufacturing, one lesser known mineral has quietly become a central player in this global chess match: fluorspar. While the media focuses on lithium and rare earths, fluorspar is the unsung hero, enabling nuclear fuel, lithium ion batteries, semiconductors, high voltage insulation, and even advanced military grade aluminum. Fluorspar is the only natural source of fluorine used to produce hydrofluoric acid, an essential input in high purity uranium conversion, chip making, EV batteries, and more. Here is where it gets geopolitical. Over 60% of the world's fluorspar is produced by China, Mexico, and South Africa, with China alone dominating the high purity supply chain. The US, which hasn't had active fluorspar production since 1990s, is now scrambling to secure domestic sources as the critical mineral tug of war heats up. With tensions rising between China and the West, especially in the nuclear and AI sectors, reliably sourced US based fluorspar has become a strategic priority. Given its status as the foundational ingredients for producing uranium hexafluoride, known as UFC, for enriching uranium to create the fuel that powers clean, reliable nuclear energy. Enter Cleantech Vanadium Mining Corp, stock ticker TSXV, CTV, and OTCQB, the stock ticker, this is over the counter, it's CTVFF. While they are best known for their vanadium projects in Nevada, Cleantech is making bold moves in the fluorspar world, and they are doing it in one of America's most prolific but long dormant fluorspar belts, the Illinois Kentucky district. Their newly acquired Campbell Kreutzer project in Livingston County, Kentucky, isn't just historically significant, it could help reshape U.S. fluorspar independence. This company is tapping into geology that has already produced over 3.5 million tons of fluorspar, and it's surrounded by modern infrastructure and major US industry players. This isn't a theory, this is action. The Gambo Kratzer Floorspar project spans roughly 250 acres of mineral rights in western Kentucky, right along the Big Creek Fault system, home to numerous historical mines. According to historical records, the mineralization at Kembo Kratzer is textbook. Carbonate hosted, fault control fluoride that starts near surface and extend 4 to 700 feet deep with consistent grade continuity along the 3,500 to 4,000 foot strike zone. Over 60 historic drill holes suggest serious grade potentials. One historical estimate found 841 tons, averaging 37.1% calcium fluoride, with additional zinc and lead. Intercepts as high as 83% calcium fluoride and zinc concentrations over 9% appear in the record. While this data is historic and not yet NI 43 101 compliant, it underscores just how rich this project could be. And just as importantly, it's plug and play ready. The site is close to water, power, rail lines, and chemical processing facilities. Arkema operates a hydrofluoric acid plant just 40 miles away. Honeywell plans to restart a rhenium conversion plant 52 miles out. There is even a zinc smelter 80 miles down the road. This proximity gives Cleantech a logistical edge. So, what does this mean for the bigger picture? If you are the US government, you are looking for exactly this: domestic fluorspar sources that reduce dependency on China, secure infrastructure near nuclear, EV, and high tech supply chains, geologically proven districts where production can scale quickly. Not to mention that in response to President Donald Trump's declaration of national energy emergency, the United States Department of Interior now has emergency permitting procedures in place, which will take a multi-year permitting process down to just 28 days at most. This isn't just an investment story, it's a national security story. From uranium enrichments to next-gen EVs, high-purity fluorspar is the mineral behind the curtain, and clean tech is pulling that curtain wide open. Strong projects need, of course, strong hands, and Cleantech is led by a team that knows how to build that. I will start with John Lee, who serves as a CEO and a chairman with the degrees in economics and engineering from Rice University. He's raised over $150 million in capital for mining ventures and led the acquisition of multiple critical mineral projects. Ron Espel, president, brings over 30 years of U.S. mine permitting experience, including leadership roles at Brics, Gold Strike, and McEwen Mining. He is the regulatory backbone of the company. And you have, of course, Andrew Yeo, a CFO, is a seasoned CPA with a deep experience in the mining sector and financial compliance across multiple exchanges. And of course, we add Alex Baer, Chief Legal Officer, has over 15 years of securities law expertise, focused exclusively on mining, navigating the regulatory minefield so their operations can stay on track. As you notice, this team blends technical, legal, financial, and strategic firepower, exactly what's needed to move quickly in today's volatile resource environments. Floorspar prices have risen steadily, reflecting its scarcity and rising demand. According to Statista, U.S. acid-grade fluorspar has seen prices above $450 a ton in recent years, a jump from a sub-$300 levels just a few years ago. And with the Department of Energy and the Pentagon pushing for domestic sourcing, and with the downstream users in semiconductors, clean energy, and defense urgently looking for US-based supply, Cleantech's Floorspar project in Kentucky is not just promising, it's timely. Add to that the rising demand from AI chips, electric vehicles, and the looming green energy shift, and you've got a perfect storm, one where clean tech could emerge as a key domestic player in the Floorspar revival. In a world increasingly defined by resource warfare, Cleantech Vanadium Mining Corporation is doing more than just digging holes. They are reviving a critical mineral district with real geopolitical weight, and they are doing it with experience, precision, and vision. Floorspar might not be flashy, but it powers everything from semiconductors to nuclear power plants. And if clean tech succeeds in Kentucky, they could be delivering one of the most important ingredients for America's technological independence. If you are watching the future unfold, keep your eyes on clean tech. Remember, there are always risks in investments, and there are no guarantees of any kind. Always do your own research. Thank you.
Semiconductor Nvidia planning to resume sales of a key AI chip to China.
That market share will either belong to our companies like Nvidia, or it's going to belong to Chinese companies like Huawei. If we don't compete across the world, then we will hand the market to China.
Welcome to GBS Deep Dive. I'm Najma Minhouse. Most people think that the United States has banned Nvidia chips to China, and officially that's true. The A100 banned, the H100 blocked. Even the stripped-down H20 chip, the version that was designed specifically for Chinese buyers, was rejected just months ago in April. But here's the twist. This week, the United States quietly reapproved the H20 for sale, and we all initially found out about it through a blog post from Nvidia itself. So what happened? Behind the scenes, Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang met with President Trump. The following week, the United States made a major policy U-turn. Jensen Huang said the president congratulated him on Nvidia hitting its $4 trillion valuation. It's currently the world's most valuable company. The US government has sought to block China's use of American technology to advance its military and AI systems. And yet now it's allowed Nvidia to ship the H20 again to China. So the question is simple. Has Washington just blinked? Jensen Huang was in China being welcomed like a rock star and lavishing praise on Chinese innovation as the news was announced. And it's driven DC hawks, Congress members, policy wonks ballistic, that he is enjoying visiting the country again and again, and he keeps praising its people. It's actually quite funny on the one hand and depressing on the other hand to read some of the inane comments made. And just to quote one example from the Wall Street Journal, the head of America's most valuable company delivered a love letter to China while visiting Beijing, extolling the country's technological advances and praising its best-in-the-world electric vehicles, or saying that Xiaomi is a miracle of a company. Imagine one of your mainstream prestigious papers ridiculing Huang by saying that he's delivering a love letter to China. At the same time, we have US Senators Jim Banks and Elizabeth Warren sending a bipartisan letter to him about his China trip and asking him to abstain from meeting with companies that are working with military or intelligence bodies in China. But coming back to the H20s, what just happened? This week, US officials confirmed that Nvidia's H20 chip has been cleared again for sale to China, along with the MI308 chips from its rival chip maker, Advanced Micro Devices, AMD. Nvidia, at the close of market hours on Monday, announced this news. And Nvidia wasn't wasting any time after that. Major Chinese tech firms, including Baidu, Tencent, and ByteDance, have already started placing their orders. Shipments are expected to begin by late Q3. So what does this mean? This isn't just a business decision. This is a geopolitical signal. The United States is quietly backing away from its attempt to contain China's AI rise, at least economically for the moment. Now, the reversal is so sharp that it's hard to frame it as anything except what it is, a backpedal, one that Washington won't say out aloud. Washington is hurting, we know, on trade and rare earth materials when it comes to China, and China wants chips. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told Bloomberg in an interview on Tuesday that Nvidia export controls were a negotiating chip in the larger US-China trade talks.
Say that that was a negotiating chip that we used in Geneva and in London.
So this was part of the trade talks when it comes to Washington and Beijing?
Yes.
In which the two countries have made a deal to lower tariffs charged on one another. The same day, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said that the resumption of Nvidia's AI chip sales to China was part of the trade agreement with Beijing on rare earths. We put that in the trade deal with the rare earth magnets, he said. So a quid pro quo, or is there more to it? The H20 might be a downgraded chip, but it's still powerful, and Washington knows it. At the core of US export restrictions is one fundamental fear: that China's military could repurpose Nvidia's AI chips for autonomous drones, surveillance, or next-generation weapon systems. Nvidia's GPUs, even the cut-down versions, are still world-leading in training large language models, targeting recognition, and battlefield decision systems. The same chips that power ChatGPT also can run military simulations, satellite tracking, and drone coordination. US intelligence has long warned that China blurs the line between civilian and military use, especially in AI. So when Nvidia ships to companies like Baidu or Alibaba, Pentagon worries that technology could trickle into the hands of the PLA, China's military. And that's why these export approvals aren't just trade decisions. For the United States, they're actually national security gambles. And why the reapproval of the H20 chip, even with the restrictions, has raised eyebrows amongst many defense hawks in Washington. Now, behind the scenes, much of the US export policy is shaped not just by the Pentagon, but by defense contractors and think tanks with deep influence in Washington. Groups like the Center for Security and Emerging Technology and the National Security Commission on AI have spent years warning Congress that AI chips are the uranium of the 21st century. Defense think tanks choose that framing deliberately to drive fear, headlines, and ultimately policy. In 2022 and 23, lobbying records showed that there's been sharp increases in defense-linked spending on tech export restrictions. And officials explicitly mentioned Nvidia's chips during closed-door briefings on China's potential AI military edge. Now, that pressure hasn't gone away. And now that H20 exports are back on the table, you can expect renewed pushback from defense hawks. And not just in Congress, but also from the industry ecosystem that profits of China being painted as an imminent military technology threat. Journalists and lawmakers have repeatedly pressed Huang on the potential use of these chips by the Chinese military, most recently in his interview with Fareed Zakaria.
Chinese military, with Chinese intelligence, with the capacity to supercharge, to turbocharge their weapons with the very best American chips, which are yours.
Jensen Huang said it was unlikely that the Chinese military would rely on Nvidia chips for their own systems due to the risks associated with using foreign technology, including potential sanctions and export restrictions during a period of high military alert. Now, he's emphasized that China has the capability to develop its own advanced technology for military applications. Now, let's rewind 2 months. In May 2025, the US Department of Commerce issued a sweeping guidance stating that using Huawei's Ascend chips anywhere in the world violates US export controls. The US government decided that even using Huawei chips, not exporting them, not selling them, but just using them is a violation. And this included chips like the Ascend 910D and the 920, even if it was used by a toy company in Singapore or a telecom company in Nigeria. And the justification? Well, Huawei's chips were built using US origin design software like the Synopsys. The language was so broad that analysts began calling it digital colonialism. After Chinese strong protests, the United States revoked its guidance. Yet now, 2 months later, the same government is signing off on Nvidia's chips going back into China. The company has spent years modifying designs to meet US export rules for China, only for the goalposts to be moved repeatedly. In May, Huang called the US export control policy a failure. Nvidia warned investors that it would take a $5.5 billion inventory hit after its H20 chip was banned by the Trump administration. Nvidia specifically designed that chip for China to comply with US rules. But in April, Washington said no. Orders from Alibaba, ByteDance, and Tencent, which were totaling over $12 billion, were frozen at the time. Nvidia's stock declined by over 15% after the announcement in April. Revenue from China has fallen for the company from 26% in 2022 to around 13% this year so far in 2025. And it's been a massive hit for Nvidia. Now, analysts expect that the Chinese AI market will cross $50 billion within the next few years. And about 50% of the world's AI researchers are based in China. Nvidia responded the same way as it did after previous bans by building another workaround. The H20 isn't a performance leader, but it was good enough, especially for inference and mid-scale model training and data center support. Nvidia has never wanted to leave China. Every time the US announces this ban, Nvidia responds with a new custom-designed chip. When the A100 was banned, Nvidia built the A800. When the H100 was blocked, the H800 was created. When the H800 was banned, the H20 was offered. And when the H20 was blocked, new chip based on the Blackwell architecture has been started. Now the H20 has been reapproved, but each one is weaker than the last one, but it's still powerful enough to maintain dominance, especially when you pair it with Nvidia's CUDA ecosystem. CEO Jensen Huang has warned, however, repeatedly that banning chip exports would only accelerate Chinese innovation. Now, Huang cannot afford to lose the world's second largest market. In 2023, he said, the export controls are inspiring Chinese companies to build their own solutions faster, not slowing them down. He wasn't wrong. Huawei, Byron, Tianshu, Xijing all have ramped up development. Huawei shipped over 700,000 Ascend chips in 2024, and it plans to ramp up production with state support. Huawei is desperate under constant US sanctions, yet it's still moving forward. Its new Ascend chips, the 910D and the 920 chips, they're all shipping now. The Ascend 910D rivals the H100 Nvidia's in inference. The Ascend 920 targets even higher performance. They're built on a 6 to 7 nanometer mode by SMSC, and they reportedly deliver up to 900 teraflops, rivaling Nvidia's A100 in inference performance at 40 to 50% lower cost. Now, Huawei's models, it has a local design, domestic fabs, and is integrated into China's AI cloud and software stack. China has the full stack. BioNTech, it's the BUR100 chip, which is seen to rival Nvidia's A100 using SMIC. More Threads was founded by Nvidia's own ex-China GM. It's a general purpose GPU for AI and gaming, and it works with Baidu's Paddle. Then there's the Ilovata Corex, which has the TI series chips for training and inference. That runs transformer models at a scale that's been deployed in major Chinese data centers. And we can keep going on and on and on. The final layer is Chinese policy. Beijing is banning foreign GPUs in state infrastructure, in data centers, research labs, military applications. If it's not domestic, it's not going to be allowed. Now, Jensen Huang has been actively involved with the Trump administration, explaining to the president that banning Nvidia chips is a double whammy for the United States. It not only reduces Nvidia sales, an American company, but it also destroys the spread of the American ecosystem control. Wang is arguing that restricting sales of American technology to China could put the United States' position as a global AI leader at risk. If American technology companies are restricted from selling to China, Chinese developers will simply create their own, which would undermine US leadership. And it seems that the president is finally buying the argument, and that is why he's allowed the restart of the H20 chips to China. As Jensen Huang said to Fareed Zakaria in his interview with him in CNN, in order for America to be the world leader, just like we want the world to be built on the American dollar, using the American dollar as the global standard, we want the American tech stack to be the global standard. NVIDIA's dominance isn't just about chips. This isn't just about the hardware. NVIDIA's power comes from its ecosystem dominance. It's about the software, the CUDA, the Tensor RT, the proprietary APIs, and the dev stacks. That's why Washington allows just enough NVIDIA technology into China to slow the shift to Chinese alternatives like Mindspore, which is Huawei's AI framework, Pangu, which is Chinese foundation models. The longer China stays in NVIDIA's orbit, the longer the US retains its influence over training tools, AI libraries, and data center architecture. But with every new Huawei chip, that influence shrinks. And with the H20 back on the table, the US is trying to delay the inevitable, not stopping it. If Chinese firms switch en masse to Huawei chips, they'll move away from NVIDIA's software too. Over time, that means that NVIDIA loses not just sales, but strategic control. And for the US, that's worse than losing a chip deal. It means losing leverage. And that's why Washington's decision to approve NVIDIA chip sales matters. It's not just about allowing NVIDIA back in. It's about slowing down Huawei's software independence and keeping China on the CUDA track a little longer.
I want to create a pathway for the Gulf states like UAE to buy American technology, to buy American chips, and to create data centers on the American tech stack. These nations, like the Gulf states, they have two choices. They can go with an American technology or they can go with a Chinese technology.
Now, let's not forget what just happened in the Gulf. In May, President Trump visited the UAE, finalizing a deal between NVIDIA and the Emirati firm G42 to build the largest AI data center outside the United States, which was going to be powered by up to 500,000 NVIDIA chips per year. It was an attempt to ensure that it was going to be a Huawei-free zone. That's part of that deal. And the message was clear. NVIDIA chips are strategic weapons, and Washington wants to choose who gets them. As long as you comply, you're in the club. But having made all those big announcements now, things have slowed down. As many DC analysts and those defense hawks that we talk about worry that China may get its hands on the most advanced NVIDIA chips. And there is some discussion that 20% of those chips which had been earmarked to be given to G42, the Abu Dhabi company leading this initiative, may not happen. Now, under the broad terms that the UAE was going to receive hundreds of thousands of these NVIDIA chips over the next several years, and it was going to help built the data centers, but who was going to run them? According to the Americans, US tech companies were going to operate these data centers, companies such as OpenAI and Meta, not UAE firms. The US is worried that UAE companies may pass on the chips or the technology or the information or even the personnel to Chinese companies. But at the same time, some administration officials do fear that Huawei, which has been selling chips in the Middle East for quite a while, could start capitalizing on this delay. So they do want to get those chips in there. If we don't provide the technology, then our global competitors will. David Sachs, who is Trump's AI czar, said recently, he added that the concern about chips being diverted away has been wildly blown out of proportion. So what does this mean? It reflects that deeper contradiction in US tech policy. You can't isolate China and protect US companies at the same time. You can't claim AI supremacy while cutting off 1/5 of the world's computing market. And you can't talk about digital sovereignty for yourself and then tell the world which chips they're allowed to use. The H20 approval shows that Washington knows this but won't say it out aloud. Well, Nvidia is just doing what it wants to do, adapting to the rules, redesigning the chip, and walking right back through the side door. Meanwhile, Huawei, under sanctions, is building chips that don't need permission, and over time, they may prove to be more powerful and may outgrow any export ban. What do you think?
China's a manufacturing country, and everything that is exactly what happened during World War II. Just change all of the private production into war production, and you're pumping out all kinds of military equipment. And China has a ton of manufacturing capability, and unfortunately, we rely on them. So what are we manufacturing? I mean, we run out. They can turn their entire nation into manufacturing. And another thing people don't recognize or realize is that, China started their one-child policy in like 1979. Basically, they've got a bunch of now 45-year-olds, 35 to 45-year-olds who were all the apple of their parents' eye because they were the only child for their parents, which means their parents gave them every ounce of resource, which means they're highly educated and whip smart. And now those 45-year-olds are engineers, and they're not just faking it until they make it anymore. I mean, these are intelligent engineers. These are engineers that can figure out how to land a rover on the backside of the moon, right on the dark side of the moon. I mean, they're doing so many innovative things. We've always had this joke or this thought that, well, China just does knockoffs and they just steal and they just this, that, and the other. And it's like that one-child policy. These kids are now 45 years old. What do you think they're doing? I mean, they're engineers, all of them. All of their tiger moms were sitting there saying, you're going to be a doctor. You're going to be an engineer. Like my mom said to me over and over, which as we can all see, I totally ended up an engineer. But that's just that disconnect of thinking, well, China can't possibly, with your bringing up the infrastructure to manufacture. But on top of that, my point is, not only do they have the infrastructure to manufacture, they have the brain power to manufacture some pretty impressive things on top of it. And that's something we should worry about.
Yeah, well, you're talking about something that no one in the United States likes to address. It's called human capital.
Yeah.
You don't just get human capital, you have to cultivate it and attract it. We've lost our high-end manufacturing capability. The microcircuitry that we're all dependent upon, that sits now in Taiwan, for instance, and to a lesser extent in the Korean Peninsula, and to a lesser extent Japan and China, that existed in the United States. Go back to the late 80s, early 90s. What happened to it? Well, with everything else, we hollowed out the manufacturing base. We shipped everything overseas. Why? Cheap labor. Now, when you go to the educational system, what's our educational system? Do we distinguish the really bright people from those who aren't? No, it's one size fits everyone, which is a catastrophe. Whereas if you go to these Asian countries, they identify, if you have 100 students, hey, I've got 10 here who are really exceptional in whatever it is, whether it's mathematics, science, language, literature, whatever. Those people then receive the lion's share of the resources, and jobs are found for the rest. In other words, education is a path to employment. Now, that's the way things were before the Second World War in the United States. That's the way things were, certainly when I went to school in Germany in the 1960s. When I was in a German school, you had the very, very high-performing students that went to something called a gymnasium, because no more than 15% of Germans went to university. Well, then what did everybody else do? Well, they went into hotel management. They went into any number of technical jobs. And by the way, big corporations like Siemens had a presence on the ground in the trade schools to ensure that these students were receiving the technical training they needed so that they could go to work for Siemens or Volkswagen or a number of these things. We've done the opposite. We've destroyed all of that. And then finally, immigration. It's been a catastrophe. We have stopped looking at immigration from the standpoint, is it plus or minus? We've insisted, all immigration is good. No, it's not.
Right.
You know, between 1815 and 1924, we admitted something in the neighborhood, as I recollect, of 30 million. And of that number, 2 million were turned away, and another million or so went home voluntarily because they could not assimilate. So we benefited because we brought in middle class, upper middle class people, most of whom were already educated, could read and write. Now, what are we doing today? We've got millions of people that can't read and write in their own language.
Yeah.
And everybody, if you raise objections to, you're a racist. Well, wait a minute, there's a big difference. I could stand on a street corner in Tokyo and I could carry signs and have a loudspeaker that says, everyone who has a degree in applied mathematics, and just go down the list, we will find a place for you in the United States. We'll give you a place to live. We'll put you to work. And I could recruit talent. I could do that in Sweden. I could do it in Austria. I could do it in Italy, where you are in Milan. We would get great people. Now, do they all have to become Americans? That's their choice, but they could come legally. We could put them to work. And if they liked it here and they adopted our way of life and our culture, then they could become Americans. We've thrown all of that overboard. So what do we allow it to enter the country over the previous 5 years? Something like 30 million, about whom we know nothing. You have Tulsi Gabbard, who stands up and says, well, you know, there's a distinct possibility that some of the same tactics that were used against our forces in the Middle East will now be used against the police here at home, because these people are coming from areas that we fear are populated with Islamist terrorists. This is crazy. This is ridiculous. You know, look at the cartels down in Mexico. They profit today more from human trafficking into the United States than they do from drugs. This is got to stop, or we're not going to survive. In the meantime, people are saying we need to go to the Middle East and support the Greater Israel Project. Insane. That makes no sense. You know, but
And
that's
And another thing that is also driving me a little bit crazy too is this whole notion that kids don't need to go to college. You know, like I get that the current university system needs to change. I understand that. I understand that we do have a predatory system. Kids are taking out massive loans. A lot of them are learning stupid things. You know, they're not getting real degrees. But there is this sort of shift towards, you just don't even need that to make money. Like, go do something else. And it's like, look, I'm half Asian. I can tell you how it is in those Asian countries. And as you mentioned, like with China, for example, here or in the United States, you know, we just say, okay, everybody gets an A or everybody gets a B, everybody gets the feel-good degree, right? And in China and in Asia in general, the kids are ranked. It's not just A's, B's, C's, everybody gets an A. No, you're ranked. If there's 100 kids in your class, you're ranked 1 to 100. And if you're the bottom one, you know, I mean, you know it. You know you're the bottom of the list, and you know if you're the top of the list. That's how they do it there. So their push is towards education, towards creating these brilliant minds that we're seeing are being used for a variety of things. And meanwhile, we're, like you said, I mean, we're just prioritizing all the wrong things and then just trying to rely on military might to solve all of our problems. And it does. And these other countries, I'm sure, have mighty militaries. They're just not bragging about them. And well, China isn't. And we don't really know what they're hiding behind the curtain. And that, I think, should be frightening for everybody, especially as we continue to just rattle towards war with China, which to me is just absolutely insane.
Crazy. I agree with you. Just try to understand something. The world that you're speaking of, what you've seen in China and elsewhere, that existed in this country before the Second World War. It existed when now you're going to figure out how old I am. When I was six years old in 1959, that existed in the school that I attended.
Yeah.
All right. So those things were there. When I went to West Point, you were ranked from the day you arrived until you left in every subject. We started out with 1,390. We graduated 835.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was told that the General Accounting Office was furious because they said they're losing money on the military academy because we're not graduating enough people. Wrong answer. We probably could have benefited from losing another 100, to be blunt with you. You want the best for your money, right? I do.
Yeah.
And so what are you doing? I remember standing in line. They used to post all the grades by name publicly. So if you ended up at the bottom or the top, it was free for everybody to see. And I remember standing next to some young man in my class, and we were all standing at attention rigidly because, we were plebes and you had to walk at attention and everything. And all of a sudden he relaxed and he turned around and he said, "Hey, Doug, it's great knowing you." He failed. He failed in one course in math. He was gone. There was no summer school. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Now we've changed all of that. West Point is now a college where boys and girls go to school together. This is nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Are you turning out razors that are going to be professional soldiers or what? No, we're not. What's the mission? The mission of the academy used to be to provide officers for the regular army, professional soldiers for the regular army. Now it is to provide leaders for the nation. What the hell is that? Is that what you're paying your taxes for? Come on. This is all crazy, but it's a cultural disaster that has metastasized and produced exactly what you're saying. Mm-hmm. So in Asia, where you have a stable culture, you have a civilization that's existed for thousands of years, they've always had exams to go into anything of importance. Mm-hmm. People that deal with Chinese tell me the most intelligent and impressive people that they've run into in any negotiation, business, diplomacy, anything else, they're Chinese. These people are highly prepared, very educated, very focused. They know what they're there to do and so forth. The Japanese are very good. Now, the good news for us is the Chinese are not aggressive militarily. And historically, their performance in military affairs has been poor. Mm-hmm. If I took you and juxtaposed the Japanese armed forces with the Chinese armed forces, you'd look at the Japanese and say, "Oh my God, they're excellent. Yeah. They're superb," because that's what they have always been.
Also ruthless.
Yeah,
Japanese
but
also ruthless.
You want to win a war, you want to fight, that's what you want. All I'm trying to say is that the Chinese, you need to understand them in the context of their history and civilization. Don't attack these people. It's stupid. Well, there will be no war with them unless we start it. We need to understand that and stop the nonsense. And people say, well, the Chinese, they own agricultural land. Right now, they own less than 1% mm-hmm. of the agricultural land in the United States. Now, I'm one of these guys who would pass a bill that would prohibit foreign ownership of minerals, mineral rights, mining, agricultural production. I would absolutely not. I would not permit that. We need to do that. You don't go to war with somebody over this nonsense. You don't like fentanyl. The Chinese are making fentanyl. First of all, organized crime in China is enormous. Corruption in that country is beyond belief. Xi has to execute 20 or 30 people every month who are at the top of the structures in that country to try and hold corruption in check. That's always been a problem for China. It's been its big Achilles heel. When the Japanese landed in Shanghai in 1937, before they went in, they cut a deal with the Shanghai banks. And the Shanghai banks say, we won't interfere with you, don't interfere with us. So there was no interference with the banking system whatsoever in Shanghai until 1942, when the war was going badly and suddenly they had to make changes. I'm trying to get something across to people. We don't have to go to war with China. You do have to control your borders. You do have to control immigration. If you don't like Chinese scientists and engineers in your laboratories, get them out. But don't go to war over this nonsense. That's ridiculous. So it's a strange phenomenon. I think China has become the sort of comfortable scapegoat. Well, everything wrong right now is China. It goes back to China. How many times have you heard Trump stand up there and go, China, China? Come on, give me a break. You know, this is annoying. There are ways to secure our interests right here at home. That's where we should focus and stop focusing on bombing people overseas.
Yeah.
And the same thing is true for Russia. It's a different country with a different culture and a different history. But there's no reason to go to war with these people. There hasn't been for a very long time, nor will there be in the future if we're smart. But we're not very smart right now. But again, you got to go back to the American people. The Bombs Away Club is very popular.
Yeah. And it seems like that club, they're getting what they want with the Israel-Gaza, with Israel bombing everybody into oblivion and committing a genocide. I mean, that's where they're, I think, getting their kicks, I suppose.
Well, I think you've got to distinguish between Americans who pay no attention to what the news says from the few that do. And admittedly, we have people who are very devout Christians who've decided that if Israel needs to exterminate or drive out 2 or 3 million people, that's justified on the basis of some biblical interpretation. I don't agree with that, but they feel that way. As for the rest of it, a lot of people they're not interested. And we have to understand something. It's not unique to us. Most people, most of the time, historically, have not acted in any particular way until they were touched by the problem. Financial, external enemy, social, whatever. Then you get action. But until people feel the pain, so to say, not much is going to happen. And that's why these people in Washington have gotten away with so much for so many decades.
Colonel McGregor, thank you so much for being here and giving us your insight. I wish that
this was quite an agenda. You didn't warn me about this one.
Sorry about that. It's just unfortunately, I wish that we were ending on a happier note of like, oh, all is well. The military-industrial complex is being dismantled. We have an actual anti-war president. Things are looking great, but that's not what's happening, unfortunately. Unfortunately, it's looking closer towards war. What's that?
Yeah, nor is it likely in the near future. But nothing goes on forever. What did Ben Stein say? Everything goes on until it can't. And I still think the financial conundrum will strike us.
Yeah.
I think that's going to have a huge impact. There's always a chance that we stick our heads out and they cut it off militarily. We are not invisible,
There is that chance.
invulnerable,
There is that chance.
invincible.
Colonel McGregor, where can people find you? I have your ex following you.
China and the United States, in my best judgment, are completely on the par with each other. I say this with a little bit of modesty, not to make my friends in the United States too insane. But we can say conventional weapons, complete parity between China and the United States. Now, in terms of nuclear war, you know the United States has the largest nuclear warhead, if not the second largest nuclear warheads in the world. Thousands of nuclear warheads. And China has never published how many warheads they have. China's official response is that I will not tell you, and I will never use nuclear war ahead of anyone else. I will not be the first to use nuclear warhead, and I will not use nuclear weapons against any non-nuclear weapon countries or nuclear-free zones. But this is important. I will have enough nuclear warheads to wipe you out in my strike back action if you dare to fight a nuclear war against China. That means this is the biggest strategic ambiguity you can expect in the world. You never know how many warheads China has, but China has told you they will have enough retaliatory capacity to wipe you out if you dare to impose a nuclear war on China. What does that mean? That means if the United States has the capability of wipe out the world or mankind 1,000 times, and China only has about 1% or 10% or whatever percentage of that of the United States. The end point is that there is no material difference because you do not need to wipe out the other side twice. You just need to have enough capability and national resolve to use that ultimate weapon if the other side imposes nuclear war on you. So wiping out 1,000 times is not materially different from wiping you out one time. That means between China and the United States, it is my firm belief for the benefit of China as well as for the benefit of the American people that war is not an option. War should not be an option. And both countries can wipe out each other multiple times. And the only way out is to engage with each other in peace, in respect for mutual benefit, rather than scheming for a war. China is fully prepared to deal with whatever contingency you are talking about, in peace, in war, or in the ultimate confrontation. But therefore, my point for Beijing as well as for Washington is let's quiet down, let's bring sanity back, let's engage each other on equal terms, let's talk about peaceful negotiation and dialogue rather than scheming to throw a wedge into the other side as if it can knock the other side down out of balance and throw it down on the ground as if there will be no consequences. That's not going to happen. Between China and the United States, war is not an option. Allow me to repeat that again. War is not an option between China and the United States. Why? Because both can wipe out each other multiple times. Don't pretend that you do not know. Don't pretend the United States has a superiority to achieve the first strike advantage to wipe out all the warheads in China. No, China has enough wherewithal to deal with the United States in war, conventional war, or nuclear war, or any other war, for example, without completely losing to the United States. So if war happens, the best scenario you can expect is mutual destruction. And that will be Armageddon for mankind. So why should anyone in a position of responsibility in the United States, in Washington, in the government, or in the Pentagon, or in the Congress, really want to risk mutual destruction between China and the United States? No. If anyone has that kind of weird idea in the United States, arrange a meeting for me and that person, whoever that person is, and I think I can talk him out or talk her out of a war scenario between China and the United States. My philosophy and the megatrend in China is that your God for you, my God for me. You believe in whatever color you want to choose, and I believe in the color of my choice. You worship your God, I worship my God. Never impose your God on me, and I will never impose my God on you. That's the only right thing between China and the United States. I think the West need to understand the realities in China. China is a force for peace, stability, development, technological breakthroughs, etc. It is completely different from what Western countries want to present China to the global audience. China is not agitating for war. China is not agitating for exploitation of any other country. China treats all the other countries on an equal basis, and China respects each other countries' political system, social system, values, etc., while China keeps its own tradition, values, and political system. China's view is that we can get along with each other despite of our differences, rather than, for example, having one country dictating to all the other countries, and the Western countries need to understand these basic truths about China for their own benefit and for the benefit of mankind as a whole. There are countries in the world which consider China as a rival or a competitor. The reality, as I tried to explain in that interview, is completely the opposite. Because China is really not a rival, not a competitor, not an enemy, not their opponent in multiple ways. China is just a reality in the world. world. China is a very large, very impactful, very influential country, and you need to get along with that reality rather than consider China in a wrongful way as your rival. China does not rival with you because China is way ahead of you and way above you in multiple ways of measurements. And try to imagine that you are a rival of China is completely detached from the realities in the world. I think we need to communicate about the realities about China to the global audience in the language that they can understand, and also in a very transparent and straightforward way, rather than, for example, always being on the defensive as if we are on the wrong side of history. The reality is that China, especially China over the past 46 years, is on the right side of history and represents the future of the world and the brighter future and the promises of the world in the coming years and decades. I'm very often shocked by these false accusations against China orchestrated by some Western governments. And these are very dangerous developments because, first of all, they are wrong, they are false. Secondly, they aim to distort the realities. They wanted to create a false narrative about China. And while China has always been a major force standing firmly for peace and stability and development, they want to misrepresent China as a force for hostilities, for confrontation, for example, or for picking up a fight with its neighboring countries. Therefore, I think we need to seize every moment, whenever it is possible, to stand up and speak about the realities about China. I do not mean that we need to misrepresent China in any way, on the left or on the right. We just need to give the real perspective to the global audience about the realities in China. And no one can really hide from the fact that China has achieved huge amount of rapid, profound transformation over the past 46 years. And China by today is the second largest economy if we use official exchange rate, and is the largest economy if we use PPP as the measurement. So nobody can really completely misrepresent what China is, and their attempts to mischaracterize China and distort the realities about China will eventually come back to bite them rather than really hurt China's fundamental interest. First of all, this recent decision is a wrong decision. It's not reflecting the decency of the American people. It's kind of a smear campaign. It's distortion of the facts, and it denies the realities on the ground in China. And I think this money spent will be completely wasted because China is a megatrend in the world. All of us need to accept China as a megatrend. And no matter how much money you spend on smearing China, misrepresenting China, doesn't change the fact that China remains a megatrend. You need to live with this megatrend rather than trying to overturn this megatrend.
So what can China do to counter what will clearly be a marked increase in misinformation in the media landscape, which is already flooded with anti-China propaganda?
Well, first of all, China need to stand on matters of principle and continue to do what is the right thing for China to do and represent its best substance to the world. Secondly, I think China need to refute such fabrications and falsehoods whenever it is discovered and try its best to communicate directly with the people and countries in the world about the realities and the megatrend in the world, rather than allow these countries to become victim of such smear campaign launched by the US government against China.
Now, you said recently that you hope BBC can come back to Chinese screens one day. So I was wondering, do you truly believe that that channel offers any value to Chinese people in 2024?
Well, BBC itself has multiple channels. Some of the channels are non-political, for example, geography, nature, etc., which are very high quality. I myself being regularly interviewed by BBC through multiple different programs, for example, BBC World Service or many other programs. And I like being interviewed by BBC. We, of course, do not have identical views on many important issues, but at least in the interview style fun of me by BBC, there is at least an attempted professionalism demonstrated in doing the interviews, you name it, etc. And I think it is very unfortunate that China was forced to ban BBC as a direct result of British government banning CGTN in Britain. I personally hope both CGTN and the BBC can be restored back to normal operations. While we may not agree with everything made by BBC, I think for the Chinese people to have the benefit of listening to another perspective, sometimes highly critical, sometimes very hostile, sometimes misinformation, etc., at least we can get the benefit and we can listen to different voices and eventually come to the right conclusion based on overall assessment of the situation. I hope both China and Britain will do their utmost to make sure that these media operations will be normalized and will be allowed to operate in each other's country.
China's logic is very simple, tit for tat. If you slap me in the face, I slap you in the face. If you hold a gun at my head, I hold a gun at your head. If you threaten war, I threaten war back at you. If you want to destroy China, China will destroy you. China will never fire the first shot, but China will not allow you to fire the second shot. That's the way of life for China. Free trade is something that China wants to defend at any cost. And if Washington keeps bluffing, keeps intimidating, keeps holding a gun at China's head, China will have no other choice but to rise up. President Trump should tell the world that he does not mean evil towards the Chinese people, and he respects the Chinese people. He needs to give a lecture to Vice President J.D. Vance. Don't call Chinese nation peasants. Deal with China as it is. Show respect to the Chinese people. That will be a better starting point for China, U.S., real negotiations. Try to bring this mess to an end and try to restore peace, try to restore free trade for the benefit of mankind.
Do you accept that Mr. Trump is trying to protect his businesses and jobs?
No. First of all, the maximum tariff against the rest of the world, including against China, will not move manufacturing jobs back to the United States. If President Trump is serious, President Trump needs to talk with China, because China has been the most successful manufacturing country in the world today. China's manufacturing output is larger than EU, US, Japan combined together. And China produces about 6 times more power for industrial use than the United States does. So if President Trump is serious about recreating manufacturing jobs in the United States, he needs to do several things. And I offer this advice without charging him a penny. He needs to build up connectivity, build up container ports, build up high-speed railway, build up high-quality highway system, for example, build up inner river transportation. And he needs to increase power generation like crazy. He needs to at least double the power capacity in the United States to really achieve meaningful amount of manufacturing jobs back to the United States. He needs to train the American people. He needs to instill this discipline and work ethics, which will enable the great people in the United States to work in factories which need to be competitive, which need to have the marketability not only in the US market, but in the global market. On top of that, you need to create an environment, pro-business environment. Now, I'm afraid in the United States today, they lack almost all of these. And you think tariff will really force manufacturing jobs back to the United States?
China is giving as good as it gets, right?
Well, I think of the greater importance is the Chinese restrictions on the export of rare earth products. This rare earth material is widely used in the national defense, especially you're talking about missiles of all kinds, phantom planes, etc. So if China really plays its cards, it will be on the rare earth export. And I don't think anytime soon, in the immediate future or a couple of decades, the United States can find any meaningful replacement. So when Trump says you have no cards, he should realize China has a lot of cards. You want to treat China as an enemy, then you will get an enemy in China. We will cut off all these supplies to you, and we will never trade in any meaningful way rare earth with the Americans. And we want to see whatever progress you can make in your national defense. I feel very sorry for the Americans. They do not need to see their living standards being ripped off, being eroded by all these tariffs. declared by Trump being paid by foreign countries, but actually paid by the good-natured, kind-hearted American people.
It is extraordinary, his behaviour. He's being described as, a one-man wrecking ball and things like that. How would you describe him?
Mr. Donald Trump is the president of the United States of America. In that capacity, I think I will give him all the respect he deserves. On the other hand, the way he is dealing with global trade, the way he is slapping such exorbitant global tariff against so many countries, foes and non-foes, friends and non-friends alike, is terrible. He doesn't know what he's really doing. He probably never went to a grocery store. He never really understands the plight and the fact that most of the Americans don't have cash reserves, for example. They don't have savings. They live from paycheck to paycheck. He doesn't care for all the economic losses he is causing. He doesn't care if many companies, many factories throughout the world will be closed because of this global tariff war. Well, there is a distinguished American who said such a global tariff war is an economic nuclear war. So we should not really underestimate the magnitude and the historical significance of this global trade war or the tariff war. Whether it will eventually evolve into Cold War or hot war, no one knows. I hope it will not. I hope some sound mind will eventually emerge in Washington. I hope eventually the American people will make their voices known, and we will avert the further deterioration of this global trade war or the tariff war and never evolve in that direction of a real war, especially a hot war. Now, in the world of today, if a hot war breaks out between China and the United States, both these countries have tremendous amount of power to destroy each other multiple times and cause Armageddon. So China is a force for peace. I hope the United States will never think about a war against China. But if they really want to instigate a war, then China is fully prepared.
What are the chances this tariff war will cause a global recession?
Very likely. I think the United States most likely will be hit with a recession first because of the problems in the equity market, in the bond market, in the exchange market, the rivalry between Trump and the Fed chairman, etc. And then inflation will really run out of control. Sooner or later, the American will find itself either on the verge of recession or really plunge into a recession. This is a high probability event. Now, for the rest of the world, I think if all these global tariff remains in effect and being implemented, the global economic growth probably will be slowed down by minimum 1% this year. So that will make lots of countries either plunging in recession or on the verge of recession. You look at countries like Germany or Britain, and if you look at Japan, for example, they are already kind of wobbly. They are not standing very firm on their feet as far as economic development is concerned. If US is in recession, if the ripple effects impact many countries in the world, and if, for example, free trade is still being battered, then the economic toll on mankind added up together will be hundreds of trillions of dollars. The international order is based upon. We see the international order being collapsed, not by other forces, but by the United States under Trump. So this is very, very dangerous. I think we need to protect our own individual countries' economic interest, that's for sure. But we also need to know where this whole thing is going. Whether rule of law will need to yield to rule of the jungle, whether the collective decision of mankind should be undermined in favor of domination by one country and one country alone, whether we should really rally around the United Nations, the WTO, and all the other international organizations to strive for consensus-based decision-making, or allow any country in the world to dominate and to intimidate and, in my best phrase I can think of, hold a gun at your head to demand your surrender. This is one of the moments of truth for mankind. And every country, every company, every society need to make its own decision. But I hope defending free trade is the right thing. It is the consensus building, especially for countries like Australia. You have more cattle than human beings. You probably have more sheep than cattle. And if you cannot engage in free trade with the rest of the world, your wealth will be diminished, living standards will plunder, etc. So in this sense, I think China and Australia and China and many other countries in the global south or in the developed world, etc., we have a vested interest in free trade. And China is patient. China can wait until the dust settles. If it takes months or if it takes years, if it takes all the way up to 2029 when the next president should move into the Oval Office in the White House, we can wait, but we can never sacrifice the fundamental principles of free trade.
In my opinion, not a serious threat. But what they're trying to do is destroy the dollar so that another country can take over and be the standard. And we're not going to lose the standard at any time. If you have a smart president, you will never lose the standard. If you have a stupid president like the last one, you would lose the standard. You wouldn't have the dollar as you. And if
you sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
If we lost the world standard dollar, that would be like losing a war, a major world war. We would not be the same country any longer. We're not going to let that happen. The dollar, you ever hear the expression, dollar is king?
Shut your stupid.
Hey, you heard that? That, my friends, was the sound of another nail being hammered in the coffin of the US dollar. For decades, it's been the undisputed king, the global bully, dictating terms and holding economies hostage. But guess what? That party is over. And the latest guests to leave the dollar's sad little shindig? Egypt and China. Yeah, you heard that right. The land of pharaohs and the dragon just dropped a bombshell that the mainstream media is desperately trying to ignore. But we won't, because the truth, unlike the dollar, is eternal. Stay tuned, because we're about to expose how this isn't just a blip. It's a blueprint for the dollar's destruction. And trust me, you're going to want to screenshot these receipts.
Egypt and China entered into 3 financial cooperation agreements on Thursday. The main topics of discussion included the creation of agreements to facilitate trade in local currencies and the settlement of bilateral commercial payments in Egyptian pounds and Chinese yuan. 3 protocols were signed, one of which links the Suez Canal Bank with the China Africa Trader Investment Company and the Chinese cross-border interbank payment system, aimed at encouraging the use of Chinese yuan in the Sino-Egyptian Economic Cooperation Zone. Additionally, both countries stressed the significance of enhancing the presence of Chinese banks in Egypt and Egyptian banks in China to bolster joint investments and support stable and sustainable.
So let's get straight to it. Egypt and China signed agreements that fundamentally undermine the dollar's reign. We're talking about a full-blown financial divorce from the greenback. So what's the deal? Local currency swap agreements. This isn't just a handshake. It's a direct bypass of the dollar. They'll trade in their own currencies, the Egyptian pound and the Chinese yuan. No more Uncle Sam taking a cut. They also agreed on payment settlements in local currency. Forget SWIFT. Forget the dollar-denominated financial plumbing. They're building their own pipes. This means direct sovereign transactions, free from Washington's watchful eye. And of course, issuance of panda bonds. Egypt is now issuing bonds in Chinese yuan. This isn't just about borrowing money. It's about embracing the yuan as a legitimate investable currency. It's a direct slap in the face to dollar supremacy and connectivity between payment systems. They're not just talking, they're building the infrastructure. This is about creating a parallel financial universe where the dollar is irrelevant. This isn't some abstract economic theory. It's happening right now, and it's a direct consequence of a world fed up with dollar dominance.
This is the system China's building to kill SWIFT and eventually bypass the US dollar. This is part 2. Mbridge stands for Multi-CBDC Bridge, and it's a blockchain platform created by China, the UAE, Thailand, and Hong Kong, along with the Bank of International Settlement. But let's cut through all these headlines here. This isn't just some pilot project. Mbridge is already processing real cross-border transactions between central banks. It lets countries settle trade in their own digital currencies instantly without needing the US dollar or SWIFT. Most people don't realize that global trade relies on the USD, not because it's efficient, but because it's dominant. And Mbridge flips that. No correspondent banks, no dollar lag, and no US oversight. Instead, it used permissioned blockchain run by central banks themselves. Each country mints their own digital currency and settles directly CBDC to CBDC. This is how China settles with the UAE for oil using the digital dirham and digital yuan without touching the dollar. And this isn't theoretical. As of late 2023, the MVP is live with 20 central banks either testing or watching closely. So why does this matter? Well, because this is the infrastructure for the new trade ecosystem outside of the dollar, built by states for states, and the US can't sanction what it can't see.
For too long, the dollar has enjoyed an exorbitant privilege. It's been the global reserve currency, the go-to for international trade, giving the US unparalleled power. But the cracks are showing, and they're getting wider. Don't believe the corporate media's lullabies about dollar strength. The data tells a different story. The dollar's share in global reserve is shrinking. At the end of 2024, it fell to 57.8%, the lowest since 1994. That's down from over 70% in 2000 and 65% just 10 years ago. This isn't a blip, it's a trend. And the yuan is on the rise. While still a challenger, the Chinese yuan is steadily gaining ground. It's being used more in payments, trade finance, investment, and even reserves. In June, it accounted for 4.61% of global payments, securing its position as the fourth most active currency. Some data even suggests it surpassed the US dollar by 2.5% in August 2024 for certain transactions. That might not sound like much, but it's a significant leap from obscurity. And it's not just Egypt and China. Countries like Russia, India, Brazil, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and even some in Africa are actively seeking alternatives. They're tired of being vulnerable to US sanctions and monetary policy. This isn't about whether the dollar will disappear tomorrow. It's about the erosion of its unchallenged power, a slow bleed that will eventually lead to its irrelevance.
The dollar has been declining, but Trump has pushed it over the cliff. American power comes from the dollar. It's the currency the world trades in, and that's what gives the dollar power. But it's being replaced because in 1971, Nixon wisely took the dollar off the gold standard. This means that the only thing that gives the dollar value is the belief that the dollar has value. And that belief comes from the stability of the US government. The American Republican Party in general, and Trump and Musk specifically, have put an end to that stability. Under Trump, global dollar reserves dropped to their lowest point in 25 years. Brics launched a system that bypassed the dollar. The US debt crossed $38 trillion. Now, 16% of the US budget goes to pay the interest, just the interest on the debt. This puts the US in a terrible situation. Interest payments become unsustainable. The central bank keeps interest rates low to delay the collapse, and then the downturn begins. Debt stifles spending, asset prices stall or decline, defaults and bankruptcies rise. The economy slows sharply. The US is or will soon be in this crisis phase. People, companies, and governments reduce debt, spending drops, asset prices crash. The government may step in with bailouts or stimulus, and the central bank cuts interest rates if possible. If not, they simply print more money. The currency weakens, inflation and stagflation rise, and this leads to rising inequality, political division, calls for redistribution, protectionism, and populism emerge. Sound familiar if you're in the US? Eventually, internal conflict intensifies, domestic and foreign investors lose confidence, the dollar loses value, and it's the end game, which is restructuring or collapse, and a new monetary system or global order emerges. The cycle takes 50 to 75 years on average. The US is in the 80th year of the cycle.
Why is Egypt's role so crucial in this unfolding drama? Because Egypt isn't some minor player. It's a strategic powerhouse, and its moves send ripples across the globe. Egypt has a lot of economic clout. Egypt's GDP is estimated at a hefty $383 to $407 billion in 2024. This isn't a small economy. It's a significant player in the Middle East and Africa. And in regards to trade with China, bilateral trade between China and Egypt hit $17.378 billion in 2024. China is a massive trading partner, and shifting this volume away from the dollar is a direct hit to its global transactional dominance. Let's not forget the Suez Canal. This isn't just a ditch, it's one of the world's most vital arteries for global trade, connecting East and West. A significant portion of global energy, commodities, and goods pass through it. When a country controlling such a choke point starts ditching the dollar, the world pays attention. And Egypt's foreign exchange reserves have been on the rise, reaching over $48 billion in April 2025. This financial stability gives them more leverage to pursue independent currency policies. This isn't just about economics, it's about geopolitics. It's about a shift in global power, and the dollar is caught in the crosshairs.
It's only a matter of time until the world increasingly de-dollarizes. De-dollarization is already underway. So if you juxtapose those things together, then you ask, do we have a crisis? Well, I think we do, but no one's really talking about it. The Germans and the Italians have both said, please send us our gold. That's $143 billion worth of gold. Please send us our gold. And the answer is silence. So now people once again are asking the question, where's the gold? Do we actually have it? All of these people stored their gold under the streets of New York City in these banks. Where is it? If it's not there, what have you done with it?
So what does this all mean for the average person in the West? It means prepare for a world where your purchasing power might be challenged, where global trade looks different, and where the economic landscape is far less predictable. The dollar's decline could lead to increased inflation. As demand for the dollar wanes, its value could drop, making imports more expensive and fueling domestic inflation. And there's obviously a shift in global power. A weaker dollar means a weaker US influence on the world stage. This will impact everything from trade deals to international relations. The Egypt-China agreement isn't just a footnote. It's a loud, clear signal. The dollar's dominance is eroding, and the world is moving on. Don't let the talking heads on cable news tell you otherwise. Do your own research. Look at the data. And most importantly, prepare, because the future isn't dollar denominated, and those who adapt will be the ones who thrive. Like this video.
But my man is here. Man himself, Carl Ja. How you doing, Carl? You doing okay this morning? Well, it's not this morning for you. It's evening for us. You doing all right?
I'm doing all right. I'm my babysitter just left at the last minute, so I'm gonna do double duty right now.
I'm sorry to hear
Ignore
that.
this.
How old is your kid, by the way?
Yeah, that's my kid. That's my 1-year-old.
Oh, yeah. So you're a new dad.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, yeah. I have another 4-year-old, so he's watching
Oh.
TV right now. Yeah.
Okay, so you've done this before.
Yeah,
This is not new for you. It's like every
not my
sniffle.
first
is
time. Not my first time rodeo. Yeah.
Fair enough. You know, it's funny. I told my ex-wife when we got dogs, so we had 2 dogs, that I thought that was her way of trying to kind of like, hey, a kid is not as can't be much worse. That's like her.
Oh, you can. Oh, you can. You can. I have 3 dogs. Trust me.
Do
that's
you?
what I thought too. That's what I thought. Oh yeah, kids just like dogs. No, much more investment.
Is it?
Dogs much easier. Dogs much easier.
But see, if you don't know, right? If you don't have any
Yeah, you don't
experience,
know.
then they can kind of make that argument to you. You just don't know. You're just completely unaware. And it's like, damn it, they got me. They got me. Oh, that's funny. Just as the audience will know, Carl Jha, he's host of Silk and Steel podcast, focused on China and surrounding regions and their history, culture, and politics. You can follow Carl on Twitter at Carl Jha. Follow his podcast on Twitter at Steel Silk In, and subscribe and support the podcast on patreon.com, Silk and Steel. Carl, there is, I don't know if you've ever read, what is it? Cixin Liu's Three Body. That book.
I know about that book. Yeah.
Okay, that book, that series of books is breathtaking. That it is like a work of art, from my point of view, and from people who are suckers for science and that type of emancipatory science. China put something up. I think this was yesterday. Now, a lot of people may not notice, but China actually has a space station. That space station has been up there for years at this point, and they've been able to expand upon that space station. This is them sending up cargo to that space station. Look at that. That is breathtaking.
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
Like, it's not just, scientifically proficient. It's breathtaking to even look at. And I think Americans don't fully get how beneficial that is, not just in a technical science sense, but in an aspirational sense. I would like to point Americans to NASA. And when NASA was doing the space race and the moon landing and everything else, and the way people were looking up into space in this kind of emancipatory, science, like, oh my God, this is what I want to do when I grow up. This is what I want to be. This is what I want to work on. We have effectively gutted NASA. So our capability of doing stuff like that has been greatly diminished. It's so
well, we're relying on Elon Musk now. It's all Elon Musk now, and Elon Musk said, you know what? We don't need to go to the moon. We did that before. Let's just go straight to Mars. Who knows when that's going to happen. And another thing is the International Space Station, which is due to retire in a couple of years. Which means in a few years, the Chinese space station is going to be the only space station in the game. And this is also due to United States banning space cooperation with China. So they specifically prohibited China from joining this International Space Station. And that is why China went ahead and built their own space station. And so, ironically, this International Space Station is due to retire in a couple of years, and Chinese space station will be the only game in town. And guess what? China invites all other countries' astronauts to work with them, but we have a law, I think it's called Wolf's legislation or whatever, that Wolf's Act that specifically prohibits American astronauts from working with Chinese. So that means anybody can go to the Chinese space station except Americans. Except for NASA, yeah.
That's so pathetic. God, that's so pathetic. I hate that. Because, I'm a sucker for Star Trek. And I kind of want us to go out into the cosmos together, not in these facts. Like, who owns the moon? That nonsense, right? Like, China goes and says, okay, this is my part of the moon. The US says, this is our part of the moon. And you're fighting a war on the moon. It's like, okay, I don't want that. That's not what I want, right? That seems to be the most ridiculous thing ever. And yet, this seems to be where that stuff is going. That's so unfortunate.
Well, NASA is not going there. NASA is not going. NASA had the Artemis program to revisit the moon. Another manned mission to the moon, and they were trying to beat the Chinese. And I think it was supposed to take place this year. Well, that didn't happen, and yeah, I don't think it's ever going to happen at this point. And China is scheduled to launch their manned mission to the moon in 2030. So I just imagine the Copian. Then in a few years, you'll be you'll be to the moon. The Copian to the moon.
It's funny. On a positive, I look at it as human achievement. Either way, like it's like just a human issue, like of being able to go to the moon or being able to go to Mars. By the same token, it sucks that America just dropped it. I mean, and I think what it is, back during the time we were going against the Soviets, we had competition with the Soviets. And so the thought was, we got to beat the Soviets to the moon. That's what we have to do. We have to beat the Soviets to the moon, meaning it became a military issue. And then when that stopped, it's like, okay, well, we're done. So look at me, we're done. Yeah, we're done. It was just a military thing. Oh, it sucks so bad, man. It sucks so bad. Oh God. Sucks.
I mean, like the whole Artemis program, which is a second NASA mission to the moon, was actually scheduled to beat the Chinese. But and then Trump is not having that, and Elon Musk is not interested because he said, oh, moon, we did that before. Let's just try something different. Let's go to Mars. But it's a whole different ball game going to the Mars, because that it will take literally years to travel there and back. So who knows when that's going to happen?
If you had a more
but China,
engine.
China, they have a concrete plan for a moon base, after their moon landing mission in 2030. So, and again, unless.
I'm sorry, Carl. I'm sorry. That's my fault. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to do that.
No, go ahead. I mean, unless U.S. change its laws that says American astronaut can't work with Chinese, that means this is it. This is the end of the U.S. moon mission for a while.
Building a base on the moon is rational. Immediately going to Mars without having a base just seems. I don't know the word for it. I mean, you need to figure out how to build habitats. You need to figure out how to supply oxygen from the soil of wherever you're going. Meaning, if you could send robots to the moon to do that, then it gives you a practice for sending that stuff to Mars, to build that stuff on Mars before you get to Mars. Like, the moon is a stepping stone to it. Elon Musk's like, yeah, let's just go to Mars. Let's just screw it. Let's just go to Mars. Okay, good luck. You do that. You do that. And then what makes it so bad, we scrapped the Saturn V rocket. And it's like, so you had a rocket that could get you to the moon and you got rid of it without a replacement for it. Yes, that's what we did. And why did you do that? Yeah. I don't get it. Carl, question. I asked one of my guests that was here yesterday, Jeff Rich. Jeff Rich has a channel. Jeff, don't kick me. I forgot the name of that channel. The Burning Archive. It's a really good channel. Jeff is Australian. And I asked him, I said, hey, is Australia really going to get fed to the Chinese? Like, is that really what they're going to do? Now, from my understanding, the prime minister is China as we speak.
Yeah.
And they seem to be having a jolly old good time. So I don't get the sense that they're going to be so willing to just feed Australians to a Chinese wood chipper. But after talking to KJ No, I don't know anymore. Because KJ was like, look, Australia has been completely obsequious to the U.S. military.
I mean, that has been the pattern. But the recent Australian PM visit to China, there seemed to send a different signal. I mean, what he said was actually China is a partner for Australia in security. And he wasn't just talking about economic security, he was talking about national security, which traditionally Australia relies on United States. And this is pretty huge because logically, Australia's largest export market is China. There's no reason why Australia should be going war against its best customer. But KJ No was right. I mean, for the past decades, Australia have acted as, U.S. junior partner, like a deputy, if you will, in the Asia Pacific. And this is because Australia still Australia has this kind of thing because they're on the periphery of Asia, but not of Asia.
Right.
Because it started out as a white colony on the periphery of Asia, and there's in their mind there's still fear like the yellow horde coming down from north gonna take them over, and U.S. is their Anglo big brother who watch their back. That's a real reason for the Australia-U.S. alliance against China. But if you look at in terms of economics, it totally does not make sense because Australia and Chinese economy are complementary. Australia is an exporter of commodities. China is a consumer of commodities, and China is Australia's biggest export market. So it kind of doesn't make sense for Australia to buy nuclear sub from United States to sink shippings that go into China. What are they going to do? They're going to sink all the iron ore ships that's traveling from Australia to China? I mean, that's ridiculous.
Why do you think the U.S. is asking them now? It's such it seems so random to be like, hey, we're not at war yet, but I need you to declare your side. And it's like, what? What do you mean you need us to declare? Right? It's almost like if you're in a club. I don't know if you've ever been in a club, especially a black club. And somebody, you can feel something about to pop off, and they say, "Hey, man, you got my back?" It's like, dude, I don't even know you. I don't even know you. Why are you asking me that? That's what it puts you in the mind of, right? It's like the U.S. is like, "Hey, we need you to declare your intentions right now." It's like, but you guys are not even at war. I don't care. We need you to declare your intentions right now.
Well,
that is so bizarre.
One reason is because U.S. right now is trying to do the empire on the cheap. Yes. U.S. realized that it cannot contain China alone. China being the world's #1 manufacturing superpower. So it's trying to corral all its allies and its vassals to do the dirty job for it. U.S. now it's resorting to proxy wars. This is a trend that started with Obama, right? Obama is the first one who coined, let's lead from behind. Right? Yeah. Let the others do our dirty work. Let's wage proxy war. Let's wage proxy war in Libya, in Syria, in Ukraine, and what they want to do now is they want to do in Taiwan, and then have U.S. ally like Australia, like Japan, like South Korea to take the brunt of the Chinese missile barrage. Those countries' role is to be sponge for Chinese missiles, so there will be less Chinese missiles for the U.S. aircraft carrier group. I mean, that's their goal. So it's still up to be seen whether those countries are signing up for that. But at the same time, right now, Trump is slapping this country with tariffs left and right. Right? I mean, he's slapping. Trump recently slapping tariffs on steel, on foreign auto parts. Foreign auto parts doesn't concern Australia, but Trump is slapping tariffs on copper imports, on steel, and like all these commodities things that Australia actually exports. And this is not. On one hand, U.S. is like, okay, come on, go bleed and die for us. But at the same time, I'm sorry I have to do this to you. I'm gonna have to slap you with 25% tariff on top of that. Because you gotta pay yourself for the privilege of being my frontline soldier. This is why a lot of the countries in the region who are traditional U.S. ally are now having second thoughts. Starting with Japan of all places. Japan was even more client vassal than Australia, and Japan is now saying, hey, if you keep playing this game, don't forget we hold $1 trillion worth of U.S. bonds. We can dump that anytime. I mean, that's a big threat. That's like going nuclear on the U.S. Financial market, and so we're gonna have to see how. And in the meantime, there is a big free trade zone, trade agreement that even includes Australia, Japan, South Korea. It's called RCEP, 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 I think, and China. This is to replace the Trans-Pacific Partnership that Trump have scrapped it in his first term. That was designed to keep China out, but except now the trade zone has China center, has China in center. But keeping the U.S. out. So the more, I'm sorry.
You're fine. Don't apologize. Don't apologize at all.
I'm sorry. So the more the U.S. try to contain China, the more its policy backfire, and then it comes Trump. You know, I like to say Trump is my president. He's my president for accelerationism. He's my president for dismantling the U.S. empire left and right. So this is why Trump is also loved in China, on the Chinese internet at least. You know, he's known as Trump, the nation builder, the nation being China, of course. You know, Trump is making China great again.
Listen, I need you to bleed for us. Oh, and by the way, here's some tariffs. Why were you bleeding? Oh, yeah. I mean, we'll see if they do it. I mean, do you think that these countries are finally going to look? I agree with you. I think the same thing, almost for the opposite reason. No, it's for the same reason, even though I think it's the same thing. I'm like, Trump is my president. Have at it. Tariff the entire world. Go after China. Go after Russia. Go after India. Do it all at once. Do it all at once. Hit Japan, hit Malaysia, hit Indonesia, hit them all at once.
He's threatening 500% tariff against anyone who is going to buy Russian oil. And guess who buys Russian oil the most? It's China. I mean,
well, to be fair, he dropped it to 100. He dropped it to 100.
Oh, okay, 100, whatever. I mean, is he right now? Is he gonna go back to the going to May when like the Chinese ships just simply stop coming to American ports and everybody's panicking? So Scott Bessent have to chase Chinese vice premier all the way to Geneva for a deal. I mean, nobody's gonna take Trump seriously. I don't think anybody takes that threat seriously. Like we just had that. We just had that tariff war already. It didn't turn out well. You know, Trump turned into Taco Tuesday. Why are you now threatening to do secondary sanction on Russia, which means 100% tariff again on China? You know, are you going to bring that thing back? I don't think so. Trump is not serious.
That is a fantastic point. And even the U.S. press is effectively saying, they said Putin doesn't believe Trump. They just said it flat out. Trump believes that Russia is going to win the war, which is kind of a no-go. Yeah. B, that they don't believe that, I mean, for one, you gave him 50 days, which is just funny to me. And on top of the 50 days, as you point out, Taco Trump always concedes something. It basically always goes back on his word. And they make the exact same point. They were like, so are you really going to hit China with 100% tariffs when you're trying to work out a deal with China? I mean, it's not like they have a deal. They have a framework currently. And so you're going to blow that up with China and India and Saudi Arabia and UAE, meaning you're going to go after all of these other countries, many of which are allies. India floats. But how do, like, you're going to blow up the gas market.
They're trying to loop India into Quad to contain China, but at the same time, they're threatening India with more tariffs. And when Apple tried to move production of iPhone to India, you know, their Tim Cook's plan is to have 26% of iPhone made in India so they can make iPhone for the US market. And then Trump said, oh, no, I don't want you to do that. I didn't say I want you to produce iPhone in India. So now India foreign minister just went to China as well. So, you know, India and China, the relationship was kind of rocky, but now because of US pressure, India is now having a soft reproach mom moment with China. And it's all thanks to Trump. Like I say, Trump is a great peacemaker of Asia. You know, give that man a Nobel Peace Prize already. I mean,
as I said, I'm for it. I'm for it. But for not because it is great, but because it is not great. And I'm hoping that the rest of the world finally grows up and realize, okay, maybe this notion of giving America this much, because truth be told, I'm blaming everybody else for this. I'm not blaming America. I'm blaming everybody else. You guys have allowed us to behave this way. And now that Trump just is shamelessly honest about the behavior. Meaning Obama was very suave. He was very debonair, but he wasn't any different. Like if he told Europe to jump, they'd say how.
Obama is like the black face of Wall Street. That's what he is. He's
that
the
plays
black face of Wall
basketball,
Street.
runs out greens. Yeah. Whereas Trump is like, why do we have a pretext? Why am I even pretending? Jump and tell me, ask me how high. It's that, right? But it's kind of like if you work at a job, your boss has a velvet glove and is not just usually a dick to you, just to be a dick to you, right? Like meaning it's far easier for your boss to say, hey, could you go do this for me, please? As opposed to get over there and do this. They're saying the same thing, but it's very different in the way that it comes across, even though it's the same thing. Trump is the get over there and do this, which people bristle at. It's humiliating, right? Do you think there's a going back to a normality where daddy is back? It's somebody like a Joe Biden or an Obama or somebody else where they're like, oh, thank God daddy's back. And the world can now be led by America with a velvet glove as opposed to the ghost face. Or do you think, no, this is a no?
I think that's what the Europeans are hoping for. I mean, remember they gave Obama a Nobel Peace Prize before he even started the job of the president, just because he's not George W. Bush. And so I think they're waiting for a second Obama to return. But I don't know, man. I'm given the American political landscape today, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen. But in any case, Trump still have 3 more years, right? I mean,
shockingly, yes.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I don't see him being removed from the presidency anytime soon. So I mean, like, we're stuck. We're stuck. I mean, unfortunately, I mean, when I say we, I mean, unfortunately, Americans are stuck with him.
Yes,
China will be fine. Yeah, China will be fine. China will keep moving forward. It's the U.S. The other average working class Americans are gonna stuck with his policies.
Why do you? I mean, and I asked this question before. I don't exactly remember the answer, but why now? Do you think he's hitting up Australia and Japan? I mean, I'm guessing he's assuming South Korea is already in the bag, but he could have asked that in a year. He could have asked it in 2 years. Hell, he didn't even need to be open about it. He could have just sent things like, hey, you with me, bro? He didn't do that. It's so bizarre. He effectively forced Australia to deal with it in a political sense, which...
Well, you have to... Well, it was a leak. It was a leak. Basically, the conversation that this is one of the Trump's Pentagon people, Colby, his conversation with Australia and Japan, asking like, how are you going to respond in case of a war over Taiwan? I think the fact it was leaked by somebody, that means that there are oppositions to the U.S. policy, right? I mean, like, basically, this is the same thing they're asking Europe to do. They ask the EU to come up with 5%, spend 5% of their GDP on military spending, which really means spending 5% of their GDP purchasing U.S. weapons. And the same thing, this is what they want Taiwan, Australia, Japan, South Korea to do as well, to arm up and to be ready to sacrifice yourself for the greatness of America. but right now, I mean, that's not. I mean, nobody have that in their cards, right? I mean, even in Taiwan, even the most hardcore Taiwan independence advocate, their plan is to Americans to die and bleed for them, for their independence. Their plan is not to have themselves to die and fight and die for America. You see, there's a fundamental disconnect here. America's like, okay, Taiwan, you got to arm up, you got to spend more money on American weapon system, and you gotta mobilize to fight China on the beach. But the Taiwanese like, no, we expect you to do that. We expect you to die on our beach. And so I mean, this is why I don't think a hot war is likely in the immediate future, because if you look at what U.S. is actually doing right now, they're already pulling their carrier group back from the first island chain back to the second island chain, back to Guam, because they know if they deploy their aircraft carrier too far forward, they will be solidly in the missile range of the Chinese missile barrage. And so now they're talking about, okay, what are we going to do with those aircraft carrier groups who are become a liability if a war break out? Maybe how can we use them if we can't forward deploy them? The whole point of aircraft carrier is for power projection, right? But it's really nowadays really for power projection against weak countries without air force, without air defense. Yeah, but even that they're not doing very well. We saw that in Yemen, right? Yemen, they lost 3 F-18s against a country with no air force and no air defense. And if in fact during the latest 12-day conflict between Iran and Israel, U.S. deployed carrier group to Middle East, and they said they was sending the third one on the way. So effectively, there are no U.S. aircraft carrier battle groups in the water surrounding China right now, and so if you look at what they do, it's actually a strategic retreat. They're already ceding, the area around China, around Taiwan, around South China Sea to the Chinese Navy.
But they have to know that China has the capability, like, to put it in perspective. Iran told the United States exactly what they were going to hit. We're going to hit, what is it called? Basically the base in Qatar. We're going to hit that base. Told them flat out, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're targeting. The United States fired all of the air defense into the sky, and Iran still hit their target. And you think about that, you think to yourself, okay, if Iran was able to do that and hit their target with the US knowing exactly where they were firing, what does it look like with China hitting Taiwan or hitting any aircraft carrier that's near China? It seems so farcical. It seems so ludicrous. And even if you're talking about a nuclear war, okay, well, you're not going to win.
Well, that's why they're pulling back. They know that, because I heard a Taiwanese journalist who recently interviewed by Stephen Su on Manifold podcast. Yeah. He said basically over every Taiwanese missile base, there will be a Chinese satellite passing over every 18 minutes.
Yes.
And China right now, they're building a constellation of satellites to rival, what Elon Musk have. And they already have the Beidou system, which has more coverage than GPS, because China have more ground station in places like Africa and South America, and so the only way. So China developed a whole entire kill chain where their satellites can detect the movement of U.S. aircraft carrier group or the U.S. military bases, and they can fire their anti-ship ballistic missiles, and then they can correct course midway based on their new feed from their satellite intelligence. And U.S. knows this, and the only way to counter that is going to have, maybe we're talking about satellite warfare, destroying each other's satellite. But that will mean there will be so much space debris around the Earth that will potentially shut down the space travel for humans, maybe forever.
And destroy any U.S. satellite that's in the area also. I mean, people
because once you start destroying satellites, and there are a lot of satellites out there, that means there's going to be space debris everywhere, and that's going to make the human space travel almost impossible.
And by the way, just to be clear, it's not just floating debris; it's going around the Earth at ridiculous speeds. Like it is just like bullets of metal, just killing anything that is in the kill chain. Like you said, it will make it impossible for even U.S. satellites, or for that matter, space travel. Oh God, man, this seems so pointless. It just seems so pointless. It's like a pointless endeavor. It's like you are screwing around with Taiwan, and nobody was trying to get their hands on Taiwan. And because you're trying to get your hands on Taiwan, now we have to make sure that Taiwan doesn't go to you because we don't want you to have a military base on Taiwan on our shore. It's so like provocative, to put it mildly. I mean, how does China look at this? I mean, China, I see Russia's response in Ukraine, and I know these are different locations because Taiwan, this is a family thing. Taiwan is part of China. And so this is almost like you're bringing back something into the fold, or for that matter, protecting it from, let's say, foreign influence. But the U.S.'s military in Taiwan right now. When does China?
U.S. is doing insane amount of provocation right now.
Yes.
Like China is acting in a very restrained manner to not to be baited into a war that U.S. won. You know, the Sun Tzu in his Art of War said very specifically, you don't want to fight on your enemy's schedule. You don't want to fight on your enemy's timing and on your enemy's chosen battle place. You want to choose the time and the place when you want to do battle. And the best way to win a war is to do it without battle. And China knows that very well. And China is very patient because China knows time is on its side. Every year, China is pumping out more warships, pumping out more missiles. And by 2030, the Chinese 6th generation stealth aircraft will be able to fly all the way up to Guam, where they will be met with no opposition because U.S. 6th generation aircraft to this day is still on the PowerPoint presentation phase. So China just need to wait. They just need to wait for Taiwan to fall back onto the lap of the motherland. So they are playing the long game. You know, Chinese, if anything, are very patient people. You know, they already waited 70 years. You know, they can easily wait another 10, 20 years, no problem.
I know, but that ignores that the United States knows that. Like the 2027 timeframe, you know, every accusation is a confession. It's very possible that's a confession, not an accusation. And part of the reason that I asked why are they asking Australia, Japan now, it's kind of weird. It's so random. It's so arbitrary. Is it possible?
There's also a reason China put on the export control on rare earth. And you know, you're not gonna get those rare earths to make your missiles to hit China. I'm sorry. You know, China is not gonna provide you the materials for you to make missiles to fight a war against China. That's just not gonna happen. And United States is not gonna be able to sort through that supply chain problem, at least within 10 years. But
it doesn't stop them from salami slicing Taiwan in the way that they
do. No, they'll keep on doing this. I mean, but think about it. Realistically, what's those 500 Marines going to do in Taiwan, right? If when the shit hits the fan, they will be stuck on the island if the Chinese Navy start a blockade. You know, they will just be sitting ducks. Like they don't make any material. I mean, their only goal, if you think about it, is to act as some kind of tripwire. So for Washington can claim, oh, our troops are in danger. We have to go save our troops, right? I mean, that's the goal of the U.S. Presence in South Korea as well. Everyone know they are to serve purpose of tripwire. If there somehow war breaks out, they're in danger. U.S. now can justify to put him, you know, to calm down really hard, quote unquote, for saving Private Ryan, right? I mean.
Is there anything in Chinese history that equals or matches this? I mean, you know, just like 5,000 years of history. So I don't have an expectation that you know all 5,000 years of. If you do, you're extraordinarily impressive man. So maybe you do.
Actually, there is a period of Chinese history called the Warring States period. This is about from 2,500 to 2,000 to 2,200 years ago. The period of 300 years of very intensive warfare among different Chinese states. And this is a time when the Art of War was written. And so China is used to having intense interstate competition. And that's kind of closely mirror what happens today. Now, China have plenty of strategic inheritance, if you will, that they can draw from their own history on how to deal with people like United States, you know, like an unreasonable, crazed hegemon bending on world domination.
How did it? I mean, what was his response? Look, from my point of view, sitting around, for me is difficult to do. And I will tell you, when I played chess in tournaments, and you have like this kind of 40 minutes, 40 moves in 2 hours.
Jamar, that's American. That's very American, because American response is always, we gotta do something. We gotta do something. No,
Right.
you don't. You don't always need to do something. Sometimes patience is virtue. You can wait out your opponent, make him getting impatient. Then maybe
it's like, oh, he's frozen.
Okay, my internet is slowing down drastically.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. It's like, which is very American. It's like something needs to be done right now. You got to do something right now. Fair enough. I mean, by the way, the Russians, they also invaded Ukraine. Like, they also took the perspective of something needs to be done.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's different. I mean, Russia, they have a very different strategic tradition, right? I mean, China, and I can understand Russia's position as well, because for them, ever since they signed the Minsk Agreement 1 and Minsk Agreement 2, things have been getting worse for them, because NATO was supplying more weapons. They were building up Ukraine military to be even more capable than before. If the Russia let that situation drag on longer, the worse the strategic balance will be for Russia when they finally do decide to do something. But across the Taiwan Strait, that's completely different, because right now it's China that's gaining the upper hand as time goes on. China is building more ships. They have 232 times the naval build capacity than United States. That's admitted by Pentagon, right? And they are doing that. They're making missile destroyers like dumplings right now in the Chinese shipyard. And Chinese Navy is already the world's largest navy by numbers of vessels, but U.S. is still largest by pure tonnage. But that is going to change in a few years. I would say in next 4 years, Chinese Navy might even be bigger than U.S. Navy, even in terms of because a lot of U.S. aircraft carrier, let's not forget, is due to retire. Like the Roosevelt, like they're the one they sent to Persian Gulf, like these. So unless U.S. try to keep around those World War II era aircraft carrier to fight World War III, we'll see. Maybe that will happen.
Do you think we're going to end up in a third World War? I mean, is China's plan, if we can develop sufficient deterrence through tonnage, through military might, the nuclear weapons, etc., then we can avoid a third World War, because the United States is not stupid enough to challenge us at that point?
That's why China is building its military force right now, and they're not just building conventional conventional force. They're also expanding their nuclear arsenal. Well, according to Pentagon reports, China will likely increase its nuclear warheads to 1,500 in 2030. Like that's enough. That's enough to glass United States from sea to shining sea. I think that's pretty strong deterrent.
Do you think this is going to end up in a nuclear war? I'm curious. Because any attack on Taiwan, any fight over Taiwan is a nuclear war. Because
look, if a war do break out, it's very hard for me to see how it will not escalate to nuclear, because one reason is because U.S. is now it's being outgunned in conventional weapons. They cannot defeat China in conventional warfare right now. This is why there's a lot of studies been floating around about deploying tactical nukes against China if a war, because their idea is, okay, maybe tactical nukes is small enough not to cross the nuclear threshold to invite a nuclear response like a city buster. But that's a very slippery slope. Like once you go nuclear, once you open that Pandora's box, that means China also can use tactical nukes. If you use tactical nukes on a Chinese naval port, what if China use a tactical nuke on San Diego? You know, what then? What then? I mean, I don't see a path of de-escalation from a nuclear war. You know, it's only escalatory. So if a war break out, it's very likely will end up in nuclear war. But I don't think the prospect for war is imminent. That's still my judgment. I don't think that's gonna likely the next 5 years.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Beyond 5 years, yeah. Beyond 5 years, who knows? Nobody can predict what happens beyond 5 years. But I think within 5 years we'll be safe.
One last point. What is the relationship from your point of view between Iran and China?
Well,
I know China considers it a vested interest, but how close is that vested interest?
I mean, Iran is a friendly country toward China, right? But if you look at actual military cooperations, it's actually the type of cooperation between Iran and China is actually less close than say that between China and Pakistan, right? Because Pakistan, like they purchased like 80% of the Chinese military hardware. The Pakistan Air Force trains with the Chinese PLA Air Force regularly every few years. And that did make a big difference in their capability. So Iran is not quite there yet, but I see a positive move in the right direction. You know, if this weapon purchase as reported goes through, like I say, those weapon purchases are not just simply exchange money for hardware. There are relationship building exercise over the long term. You know, this is a start of a decade-long defense cooperation. So it's moving in that direction. It's not quite there yet, but I think in the coming years they will likely grow even closer.
I hope so. I mean, because China does understand that Iran is a pillar to its own security, correct? I mean, it seems like it understands it.
Of course.
Okay, good. I'm that sounds like a stupid question, but for the longest time, Iran wasn't buying anything from China. They didn't want Russia's help or weapons.
Well, I mean, no, people have to remember, there was an international arms embargo against Iran that wasn't lifted until October 2020. So Iran essentially only had like 5 years or 4 years, only had 4 years to do this arm purchases. And they did make some deals with Russia for air defense and jet fighter. But again, it takes time to. It's not like these are not like BB guns, right? These are not BB guns. You can't just use it right away. You have to train your pilots. You have to train your ground crew. You have to train your people who can handle those new radar systems. So that takes time. And so the question now is really, would Israel and United States give Iran the time to arm up? Because you would take Iran at least a couple years to rebuild their air defense system, and you will take them longer, maybe 4 to 5 years to build an effective air force. So the question is whether Israel can wait that long to break a ceasefire, right?
No, they cannot. They cannot. Yeah, we'll see. And yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I know people are talking about the missiles or the airplanes, but that stuff is not overnight. That stuff's like a decade to get a proper trained air force that's capable and everything else. So, Carl, man, as I point out,
The CIA took decades to build a spy network deep inside China. Then, in the space of just 2 years, 20 of their informants disappeared. It was one of the worst intelligence failures in history, involving secret chat websites, a potential mole, and a whole lot of incompetence. And today, I'm going to show it all to you.
The Chinese government has systematically identified, captured, and killed up to 20 informants working for the CIA.
Our covert assets are the most precious asset any CIA officer has.
We had 20 U.S.-related spies and operatives in China that are no longer to be heard from. They're either dead or in prison. China took care of business.
It's 2006, 4 years before the China incident, and a private contractor named John Reedy is working deep inside one of the CIA's most secretive branches. Reedy is in charge of locating informants and setting up communications with them. His specialty is the Middle East, specifically Iran. But one day he notices something strange. I want you to take a look at this document that Reedy filed. Now, it's top secret, so a lot of this has been redacted, but there's enough in here for us to make sense of what he was trying to claim. As our efforts increased, we started to notice anomalies in our operations and conflicting intelligence reporting that indicated that several of our operations had been compromised. The indicators ranged from to sources abruptly and without reason ceasing all communications with us. Years before the China network collapsed, Reedy was seeing the exact same pattern. Informants abruptly ceasing communication with them, mysteriously disappearing. Their information tap was shutting off midstream. And now, I want to show you what went wrong. Look at this website. Whilst most of us can't understand what it says, it's in Persian, you would probably say from looking at it, it looks like an ordinary soccer fan website. It's not. This is the communication tool the CIA used to speak with informants in Iran. This website was hiding in plain sight on the internet for anyone to see. It's been shut down now, but I could still access it using the Wayback Machine. Now, if you look closely down here, there is a search bar. And this is where it gets interesting. If we reveal the source code on the website, which you can do with 2 clicks, the label on the search box is password. So now, through some deep investigation, we know that this search box is not really a search box, it's actually a password login. And if you enter the correct password, a second pop-up and second login is triggered. If you enter the right password there, a secret message box appears where you, as an informant, can share your intel with the CIA and receive intel back. Believe it or not, this basic messaging website became incredibly popular within the CIA when John Reedy was working there. At first, it was only used for communicating with sources in hostile areas, like war zones, where it was too dangerous to meet in person. But as it was so convenient to use, it spread way further than that. Hundreds and hundreds of clones were produced and given to informants all around the world. Each site was built for a single person to limit the exposure if that informant was caught by an enemy government. Here's one designed as a Johnny Carson fan website, a photography website, and one for video games. But sometime in 2009, Iran finds a website exactly like this one. Sources believe that a double agent led them there. And once they had access, they start to dig, using Google of all things. Iran notices that these websites have specific digital fingerprints. They're little bits of code that made them similar to each other. So they plugged these unique fingerprints into Google search using some advanced search queries, and boom, just like that, they find other versions of these websites. The exact same functionality, just a different bad design on top. Seriously, I know this was 2009, but the terrible web design on these sites is a crime in itself that someone should be punished for. Anyway, once Iran pieces together a catalog of these ugly websites, they watch them. They watch the traffic, they watch the IPs, the locations, to see who would show up. Those that did were caught red-handed working for the CIA. And that's how the spy network in Iran started to unravel, site by site, visit by visit. It's shocking how simple it all was. But John Reedy sees this vulnerability even before Iran does. And he sounds the alarm. I personally crafted several cables detailing the threat we discovered. I provided at least 25 recommendations that we had to impose immediately. But inside the agency, they didn't want to hear it. They did not want to admit the obvious because it was their funding their platforms, their offices, and their unwillingness to change course that led to future compromises. In 2008, Reedy was notified by his government managers that they wanted to take on new responsibilities, requiring a change to his contract. He asked to be assigned to another account, but was denied. And 3 months later, he's informed they will not be renewing his contract. And when he's fired, there are still hundreds of these websites operating around the world. They're like little ticking time bombs waiting to explode and expose precious informants. But time moved on. 3 long years pass after Reedy was fired, and it's not until informants in China start disappearing one by one that panic sets in. The CIA is in chaos. The panic triggers the creation of a joint CIA-FBI task force, codenamed Operation Honey Badger. These guys had to find the leak and stop it. But as Operation Honey Badger starts investigating, the dodgy chat websites are not their focus. Rather, another possible explanation appears. A mole. Someone who has been inside the CIA. And as the mole team starts to build a profile, one name keeps coming up. Jerry Chun Xing Lee. On paper, he ticks every box. Jerry Chun Xing Lee was born in Hong Kong, raised in Hawaii, and he was an army veteran who was also fluent in Mandarin. He joined the CIA in 1994, and he handled sensitive operations in Beijing and Tokyo. He ran covert assets. But by 2007, something broke. Lee's career had stalled, and he leaves the CIA. He quits, disgruntled, then moves back to Hong Kong. But the CIA took notice. An ex-agent who had a top secret clearance, he had really sensitive information about Chinese spies, and now he's left, disgruntled, and he's moved to a Chinese-occupied territory. It's not a crime, but it is suspicious. So the CIA did something bold, deceptive, and kind of brilliant. They set a trap. They create a fake job opportunity with a big salary and reach out to Lee. But there's a catch. To get the role, he had to attend an interview on US soil. Lee takes the bait. August 2012, Honolulu, Hawaii. Jerry Lee lands, checks into a hotel, and everything seems normal. Except it isn't. The FBI is already there. Operation Honey Badger is waiting, watching. As soon as Lee leaves the hotel room for the day, agents move in with a court-authorized warrant. They searched everything, and they hit the jackpot. Hidden in his luggage are 2 small black notebooks, not too dissimilar from what I'm holding here. The first one was a 41-page date book. The second one, a 21-page address book. Both have handwritten notes, detailed handwritten notes, put in there by Lee, and both are deeply damning. Inside, there were true names of CIA assets with phone numbers, operational meeting locations, and details about covert facilities. A gold mine for foreign intelligence. But that wasn't all. Agents also find a thumb drive, a USB. Forensics dig into it, and buried deep there is a deleted document, which had a breakdown of CIA officers, mission timelines, and sensitive ops. This was top secret stuff. The FBI photographs everything, and then they vanish before Lee even returns. He doesn't know it yet, but he's in trouble. But capturing a traitor wasn't the end of the story. It was just one piece of a complicated puzzle. A puzzle that John Reedy had tried to partly solve years earlier, but that no one wanted to hear. 1 year after evidence was found in Jerry Lee's hotel room, Operation Honey Badger made another shocking discovery. The CIA was still using those dodgy chat websites to communicate with informants, but they had spread to China. It's suspected that Iran communicated with China, showing them how to find these websites. Once China had access to the websites, they could track Chinese informants and then hunt them down with deadly precision. The ticking time bomb had exploded, and the CIA had paid the worst price possible. Finally, 7 years after Reedy first noticed it, they scrambled to shut these websites down. But there's something I didn't tell you. Not all of these 20 informants in China use these websites to communicate back with the CIA. Top-tier informants had other, more secure ways of communicating back with the CIA. So could it have been a mole that gave these people away? Well, That's where we come back to Jerry Lee. By 2013, the US government had the pieces, the notebooks, the thumb drive, but in espionage, evidence isn't everything. They still couldn't prove Lee had given it all to China. They needed him to confess it. And Jerry Lee was no amateur. He was trained by the CIA, so he knew how to lie, how to evade, how to stay silent. Through 4 rounds of questioning, he held the line. But on the 5th, he cracked. Lee confessed to receiving taskings and direct orders from Chinese intelligence officers. He admitted that he created the classified document found on his drive. On May 1st, 2019, Jerry Chun Xing Lee pleaded guilty to conspiracy to deliver national defense information to a foreign government. He knew exactly what he was doing. And on November 22nd in the same year, he was sentenced to 19 years in federal prison. In the end, Operation Honey Badger did catch the mole, and they also discovered the communications hack that led to these informants being caught. So you might say, job well done, right? Well, whilst Jerry Lee's name was splashed across news headlines, there really wasn't a lot of publicity about the failure in these communication systems. No one was held accountable for the dodgy implementation, leaving literal password in the source code. No one was held accountable for leaving these sites live and letting them spread to areas where they shouldn't ever have been used. And definitely no one was held accountable for ignoring the whistleblower, John Reedy, and ultimately firing him and kicking him out of the agency. But accountability in espionage is complicated. Intelligence agencies like the CIA prefer to remain in the shadows and operate in secret for fear of leaking unnecessary information to their enemies. That information then could be used against them. Yet secrecy comes at a price. We may never know the names of these 20 informants in China that risked their lives to bring back information to the US. And some of them actually paid the ultimate price with their life to do that. Their sacrifice remains hidden, their names unknown. Should the CIA have held people accountable for these failures? Or is secrecy just the cost of doing business? I'd love to know your thoughts, so let me know in the comments below. Speaking of accountability,
What is in Tehran, Iran, that they want destroyed and erased forever? Let's go find it. A post on Truth Social from Donald J. Trump states that everybody should immediately evacuate Tehran. And so, that night, they all listened. A mass evacuation took place, evacuating an old world city, in my opinion. So again, let's go find exactly what was evacuated. The Golestan Palace, a palace from the old world with architecture that shreds the mainstream narrative story hour in a second. A structure that does not belong in our timeline. The photos inside this building are incredible to look at. If my town gave me one of these, I think I would lose my mind. With the griffins right on the front entrance at the bottom, as well as in the art, a palace without a doubt. And we have talked about wars many times. We have seen the destruction countless times. Planned attacks on locations that are filled with old world buildings, places that don't belong in the horse and wagon era, especially when we are told that this palace, a UNESCO site, was constructed in the dirt road era, the no toilet era of the 1520s. They're wiping with their hands, yet constructing this palace while riding around on their donkey, with major reconstruction plans taking place in 1797, with records of the actual construction process, of course, being vague or symbolic. Little manpower and tools, none of it was documented. While at the exact same time, they're supposedly documenting their political reforms and royal life extensively. If you were in the business of documenting things, you would mention how this place was constructed, at least a little bit. Yet, nothing is documented. And time again, we see this. We've seen how many horses it would take to construct something like this. We already know that the horses need a lot of water. And this would all have to be planned out. This would be part of the story. And we know that the manpower would be massive. Yet there is never any documentation on this. So let's go deeper. There's a subterranean storage area beneath the Salem Hall, a central part of the overall complex. So now we all know that it's bigger than we can see. And we're all given the excuse that it's for storage. Of course. And we believed that for years. A palace from the old world where we know that they connect to others underground. And we know when we find one, there are always so many more right next to it. So let's go find another one. Just a half a mile away, we have located the National Museum of Iran, where we also have this massive box of land. We've seen this before. We've even seen this in San Diego, California. We've seen that this is clearly covering something of importance. The National Museum of Iran. It is home to artifacts that would show that something else happened here. Something much different than the story that we're all told. Again, hands removed, and we know exactly why. You'll want to go to episode 113 right after this. A building that was supposedly constructed in just 3 years, between 1934 and 1937. When we all know they started the Obama Presidential Center in 2021, and they still haven't finished that one yet, where they're basically the exact same size. 19,000 square meters for the museum in Iran, and right around the same exact size for the Presidential Center in Chicago. And what is this at the top? The National Museum of Iran includes a basement level. This is very interesting. And I wonder if it's just for storage. And we're just getting started today. Welcome to episode 135 of My Lunch Break. I hope you're all having a great day. And if you're new, welcome. You've heard the hype. Maybe you've seen the new launches sell out. But if you still haven't tried 1775 coffee yet, this is your shot, because they've just launched their 1775 starter kit. And the first drop is limited to just 1,000 units. This starter kit isn't just some dinky sampler pack. It's a full-on pack of caffeine freedom. A bold dark roast. It hits harder than in fact, we have seen that most items, millions, that I believe would expose the mainstream story. And we know this location has a basement, where we have seen in episode 109 that most museums have basements. In fact, we have seen that most items, millions, are off limits to the public and are not on display. We already know this. We've seen this, where we see that this location, an old world building, in my opinion, holds a basement that is 3,000 to 4,000 square meters, or 32,000 to 43,000 square feet, a massive underground space, all completed in just 3 years, we were told. 3 years for a 43,000 square foot basement would be shocking. And then you've got to build the structure on top. This isn't working anymore with rotating exhibits. And there it is. We know that this is where the old world incredible items are held. Rotating exhibits. This is code for off limits to the public. What is really under the structure? With many controversial or symbolically powerful artifacts, especially those predating Islam, or featuring iconography tied to Zoroastrianism, female rulers, or alternative power structures, are all kept out of the galleries. That seems like a lot of items that are off limits to the public that I want to see. These objects reside in the museum's basement level storage. It's inaccessible to the public and even to many academic visitors. Do you understand what's going on here? Without a doubt, We are not told the truth. We're not given the true history. We are lied to 100%. And it couldn't be any more obvious at this point. This isn't the only museum that's doing this either. Episode 108, we were told that there are 53 miles of shelving, documents, historical records, all still undisclosed, restricted access, where the public cannot view these archives. How is History 101 still a thing? How? It doesn't make any sense that you can hide all these artifacts, and then we're supposed to believe these stories, these fake stories. It's not the true information. It's literally a waste of time to study and regurgitate. The truth, I believe, is in these basements. And we all know why this location is being evacuated and under attack. Again, as I always say, all of this is in my opinion, and you're free to think whatever you'd like. But it's based on what I see. It's based on the things that they show us. They tell us the patterns and the repetition. We saw this in Dresden. We saw this in Iraq. We know how this works. They're not going to tell us that they're bombing this specific museum. They will just say, evacuate the city, just like they did. And you know the rest. Where 3 million artifacts, most of them being undocumented, and we're never going to know what they really were. Never seen by the public. If they do decide to attack this location, along with this building, those 3 million items and possibly more will be lost forever. Our true past. We would be unable to challenge their stupid story. All artifacts would be lost in an instant. Now, I keep referencing it, but it ties in perfectly with episode 109. Live events happening right now, tying together with this specific episode. Where the Library of Ashurbanipal, Iraq, where it held the 30,000 clay tablets, the Epic of Gilgamesh, where Gilgamesh was searching for the plant to live forever. We all know this. We've seen this. And I wonder, what tablets are in this building in Iran that we don't know about? What is a part of the 3 million artifacts that we're all not told about? And again, is there more than 3 million artifacts? The fact that we are not allowed to see them, I wouldn't be shocked at all if it's way more. Of these 3 million artifacts are supposedly giant beings, where they are described as being 8 to 15 feet tall. Burials in stone-lined tombs. And of course, elongated skulls with unusual jaw structures. Uncovering abnormally large skeletons. Elongated skulls. Just like episode 96, where we found 7,000 of them in the Hypogeum. We're just getting started. Let's take a minute and thank all of our badge members, all of our Patreons, and every single subscriber, and everybody who likes the episodes. I appreciate all of you. By subscribing and liking, it helps put this information in front of more and more people's faces, an opportunity for them to see the truth, and at the very minimum, to ask questions. We are on YouTube. We're on Rumble. We're on not going along with the mainstream story. A story that is set up to control the population and to show that we are not the most advanced beings to ever be here. Is Iran not destroying these artifacts in the basement? Artifacts, human remains, possibly tablets, things that would expose that their made-up tale is not the truth about this place that we live, and that something much deeper is going on. Did you watch our last episode? Episode 134. I do believe at this point in time that there is a massive organized plan to feed the population a mass amount of lies. A fully manipulated historical story. A plan to confuse as many people as possible and to take as many people with him in the end. I do believe that this is the time to either be searching for the truth or going along with the lie. There is no in between at this point, and we can see that things are heating up. I wouldn't bring it up today for no reason. We have covered 2 locations in this city today, but we all know that there's so many more. There are most likely underground networks, cities as we've shown, things that we don't understand fully, which is exactly why it's so important to continue to ask questions about the locations that the light is being shined on. What else is in this location? The real reason for telling millions of people to evacuate. Again, it's not just this building that we can see. It's what the buildings are sitting on top of, what they connect to, and we have tangible proof that this city has a tunnel system located in the dead center of the city. we are told that this city was built on top of an existing cannon network. This is an old world underground tunnel system that's used to transport water from the mountain aquifers to cities, farms, and settlements without using pumps or modern machinery. The city is built on top of this. So we know that there's underground technology under this location, old world technology. We know that. Then we're told in November 2024 that Iran was building a tunnel in the capital of Tehran. We already know that this is from the old world. This is not a new tunnel, and they weren't just starting the construction. Tehran is an old world city, in my opinion, a massive site that is mainly underground. Are you still on the fence? When in January 2025, Tehran, local people have uncovered a remarkable underground city beneath 5 old world homes. Now, of course, they found these tunnels, and I believe they've been modernized. I believe that all over the world, every single country, they have put trillions of dollars into these underground locations. We've seen it in the mountains, but as an example, I believe Iran found this network and has been modernizing it to this day. What is under our feet is incredible. Back in March 2025, Iran published this video to show exactly what's underground. There are cities under our feet, without a doubt. Massive, powerful cities. And we're not invited. Again, they were told to evacuate, all for their safety. They've been doing this exact same thing for years. And so many people have given their lives for it, unfortunately. Dresden, Baghdad, and on and on. What's under this city right now? The tunnels, the vaults, the chambers, the artifacts in the old world. The truth about what was once here before us is all under attack right now, as we speak. And I believe we have proved this today, where we haven't even touched the surface of all the incredible buildings and structures in this location. There are so many more that would blow our minds. So many old world buildings, sites, locations that surely have tunnels. And they're all connected. And they don't make sense in the timeline that we're all given. Massive doors that weren't built for the people our size. Over and over we've seen this. And then we enter the museum and just drop the guy down and look inside, with pottery everywhere to distract us from the truth. Fake pottery that they made in the local warehouse just a few years ago. It's ridiculous and it's distracting. Nobody found that pottery in the dirt. It's fake, in my opinion. And we see a massive head depicting a figure from Mesopotamia, just like Gilgamesh, meaning that they have more without a doubt in their basement. The exact reason, in my opinion, that Baghdad was invaded. And another creature here, a depiction, in my opinion, of a giant being, of what was once here. A crocodile, or you could say reptilian-headed figure, sitting like a human, where this is not normal at all. I don't believe we were supposed to see that figure. And I think they took something out of it, drilling a hole right through its side to remove whatever was originally inside. This being was here. This is a depiction of the old world, without a doubt, with tablets on display, meaning that we know that they have so many old world tablets inside this building, inside the basement. It's an incredible location with so many old world items, a location that we are all told is being surrounded, a complete and total takeover, control of the skies over Iran. I have no idea what will happen or who is on our side, or if anybody is at this point, but I can see physical locations. I can see artifacts that belong to the old world. This location has tunnels. They have old world buildings, palaces, and items that I believe are being attacked, especially when we swing the camera around right over here. And what do we see? We see an oversized skeleton. We see a giant being.